more initiatives. And joining me now is District Media President Beverly Hallberg. Beverly, just your thoughts. This feels like a hastily cobbled together event that I think maybe to a degree the Biden administration trying to pull the narrative away from the border, which was the #1 topic of his first and only press conference last week. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they're still trying to avoid calling what's happening on the border a crisis. And I think when it comes to COVID, what we had in this speech was some hope dashed with some doom and gloom. So while we do have this great message that vaccines are getting to more people and that not just the vulnerable, but as the ages go down, that more and more people are going to have access, he's also talking about life not going back to normal, that you should still be careful. Are we supposed to still double mask? We know he wants states, due to this speech, to have a mask mandate still. And so he bashed states and their leaders as well. What I would like mixed into all of this is to also weigh the economic aspect of this. It's not just about going back to concerts and sporting events, which I think is important. It's also, what does this mean for businesses? He seems to be discouraging people to do anything other than take the vaccine and hole up in home. And I think that's the concern is, are you really going to have people want this vaccine if there really is no difference in the way they can live life?
And to that point, the most recently passed COVID bill was pushed through in part because of a sense of urgency and doom and gloom. It feels like if you take away that part of it, trying to get all of these spending programs through, despite the fact that we've already had $6 trillion, becomes a lot more difficult. And also, I think the Biden administration heard the media over the weekend, which really seemed to circle the wagons to try to mitigate damage about the border, suggesting that this should be elevated to the top #1 topic in the country.
Yeah, I think people are seeing through even some of the coverage that is favorable to the Biden administration and realizing what's going on the border is a major crisis. And so I would even point to something that came out last week by the Associated Press. They were telling their reporters in an internal memo that they need to report things going on in the border with, quote, accuracy and neutrality and to avoid hyperbole. But of course, this is not the standard that President Trump received in the past. And I think what we're seeing from the media is a lot of partisanship and how they report. And when you find that even partisan media is becoming harsher on the president, some of those outlets, they are trying to turn their tune. And I think the fact they didn't mention COVID at all in the press conference last week is showing, and President Biden is trying to make up for that.
Well, President Biden might be getting some help, right? Because big tech activism took another big step. Forget about the pretense of being apolitical or impartial. There's a new trade group out there, big tech. It's called the Chamber of Progress. And they're going to really help a lot of left-leaning issues, starting with voting rights. What do you make of this? These large corporations that have all of our data still saying now they want to make us, they want to put their imprint on things like, voting rights and things like that. I don't like when corporations get into this lane.
I don't like it either. And it's not just voting rights. They're talking about having a more progressive tax rate and fighting climate change. And you may say, well, what does this have to do with big tech? Well, I think at the heart of all of this is they know that if they have progressive ideology that reaches out to politicians, progressive politicians, that legislation and regulations are passed in their favor. For example, you had Mark Zuckerberg talking to our senators last week in a hearing. He said that he was a proponent of more regulation on big tech. Well, who does that benefit? Well, that benefits him because his competitors, smaller companies, are pushed out if they don't have those measures put in place to deal with these costly regulations. So always look at the heart of big tech. And I think what you find is there's a money trail to progressives, and they know in the end that they hope legislation benefits them.
Yeah, it puts a big moat around them, and that, to your point, makes it even harder to bring them down. Beverly, thank you very much. Talk to you real soon. One thing the media, though,